Well, only being gone 1 week, it was good to be gone, but I really missed all of you last week Sunday. But I hear that the service went extremely well, and that Stephen, the seminary student, I heard lots and lots of positive feedback that he really was able to speak to all of you. So that's awesome. That's wonderful. I had a chance last week Sunday with my daughter and son-in-law out in California. We were at a very small church, of which we walked in, and there was probably 30 people, and I think all 30 people caught us. We were sort of like a magnet. You walk in and bam, everybody was there with us. But it was a very friendly church and a wonderful worship opportunity. And I really encourage any of you, when you're traveling, when you're on vacation, it's not a time to be vacation from God. Really encourage you, and I got this growing up myself from my dad, mom and dad, whenever we were on vacation. We would never go basically to a Reformed church. We'd always go to a Baptist church or an African American church or a Catholic church or a Lutheran church, just to get different feelings or different experiences within the worship life of the whole church. So I really encourage you, when you're off other places, just to do that. Get a different feel and flavor of how other people worship the one true Lord and God that we all worship together. I want to remind you, for most of you who were here probably 2 weeks ago, what we're doing for the season of Lent is we're taking the whole season of Lent and we're looking at the last week of Christ's life. We're looking at the last week of Christ's life. Sunday, for Palm Sunday, we're actually going to look at that on Palm Sunday in about 4 more weeks. But 2 weeks ago, we looked at Christ cursing a fig tree and then cleaning out the temple. When he cleaned out the temple, and he said, "My house is called to be a house of the Lord," not a place where there's all the distraction from worshiping God. Tuesday of Passion Week, we're going to be looking today at Jesus teaching and also confronting the leaders, or in some respects, confusing the leaders. Now, this is a teaching that I've been excited to do, but I'm also a bit leery to do, because the simple fact is, we're going to do a lot of reading. We're going to do a lot of reading. It's almost going to be like I'm going to be offering you all 7 different mini sermons. How's that? That doesn't mean you get to skip for the next 6 weeks. I can hear some of you when you walk out, you say, "Hey, PG, okay, we got 7 in a row, now we can skip for 6 weeks." Not unless you give 7 weeks of offering, right, deacons? Not really. But I encourage you to turn with me to Matthew chapter 21. If you have your own Bibles, Matthew 21. Remember, if you don't have your own Bible, we have Bibles in the lobby. And really want to make sure that you have your own Bible at home. I don't have all these passages up on the screen. I don't have them all up on the screen. But there should be some Bibles around you if you don't have your own with you. Matthew 21. As I already said, you can just follow through, Kim, because we're only going to one slide. As I already said, on Monday, Jesus cleaned out the temple. And if you can recall, with the cleaning of the temple was built with the outer part of the temple was the court of the Gentiles. Then there was an inner part with the wall, which was called the court of the women. Then there was even a more inner part, which was the court of the Hebrew men. And then there was the holy place in the Holy of Holies, where only the priests and the Levites, the religious leaders, like pastors, would be able to get to. And it was in the outer courts, the court of the Gentiles, where all this buying and selling, the exchanging of money for the temple tax, the buying of the sheep, the doves for the sacrifices, that was all taking place there. And if you can recall, 2 weeks ago, we didn't really talk about the fact that it was necessarily negative for the fact that there was commerce going on. But what was going on was an exploitation of the people. Exchange rates were so high. They were selling sheep for an exorbitant amount of price over what they could have bought a sheep outside the temple. The religious leaders who owned the bazaar in the temple were making a lot of money off the people. And Jesus says, this is not what it's all about. It's about worship. Tuesday comes. Tuesday morning. Jesus goes back into the temple. And here within the temple, and you go to the next slide, Kim. Here within the temple, it says Matthew 21:23. Jesus entered the temple courts. While he was preaching or teaching, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him, and they said, "By what authority are you doing all these things? And who gave you this authority?" Well, think about what's going on. Number one, Jesus is disrupting their financial goods. The economy, the extra kickback that the priests were getting. The religious leaders. He's disturbing that economy. He's also, if you can remember throughout studying the New Testament or the Gospels, how many times didn't Jesus heal somebody on the Sabbath? Many times. And the religious leaders would become irate with that because you cannot do something like that. You can't work on the Sabbath. So he's interrupting their economics. He's not obeying the Sabbath laws. And also he's teaching something brand new. He's teaching something radical. Something that they don't see within the Old Testament. So they come and they say, "Jesus, by whose authority are you doing this?" It's interesting with this. It's interesting because, you see, an individual could not become a rabbi until they were at the age of 30. When did Jesus start his ministry? 30. In the process of growing up, before you could become a rabbi, a teacher yourself, you would need to be a follower of another rabbi. And what would take place in that culture and that time was when kids were within those teenage years or so, late teenage years, maybe early 20s, if they really felt called by Yahweh God, Jehovah God, to become a leader, a teacher, a rabbi means teacher, they would go up to a rabbi and they would say, "Can I follow you? Can I learn from you? Can I basically live with you and mentor from you and walk with you and do everything that you do? Can I be your shadow?" Individuals would ask the rabbis if they could follow them. The rabbis did not ask individuals to follow. What did Jesus do with 11 of the 12 disciples? He asked them. Andrew was the one who went and followed Jesus after he was with John the Baptist. And he goes and follows Jesus and says, "Lord, where are you going? I want to follow you." So there's a twist that's going on here. But also, when an individual follows that rabbi long enough and has learned enough, what I've been taught before, I had a hard time, I couldn't find it this week going on Google and all that, but what I've been taught before and learned from some people that I highly respect, Ray Vander Laan is one of them, from That the World May Know, is that to be a rabbi at age 30 or beyond, you needed to have 3 other religious leaders, rabbis, laying their hands on you for ordination. So the religious leaders are saying to Jesus, all these things you're doing, by whose authority? Who laid their hands on you? Who was your teacher? Who did you learn from? I love this, what Jesus says. Verse 24. To understand how Jesus responds here, you got to understand within the rabbinical tradition. Rabbinical just means the rabbi tradition. They would not always answer a question, but they tended to answer a question with another question. Some of you have taken Bible studies with me. Some of you are in the Wednesday night Bible study group with me right now, or sermon study group. If a question's thrown to me, oftentimes I don't answer it, do I? I tend to ask a question back. That's a method, a way of the rabbis, how they would talk with each other. So the rabbis say to Jesus, the religious leaders say, whose authority? Jesus says, okay, I'm going to ask you a question. If you answer me, I'll answer you. John's baptism. John the Baptist. John, the one who so many people went out and followed at the River Jordan. The one who was beheaded by King Herod. John's baptism. Where did it come from? Did it come from heaven or from men? Well, at that point, you can tell the religion